everyone, and welcome back to Don't Open That Door. I'm Justin, and I just came to Boyle Heights to visit my friend, and what is this?
I'm Nico, and, hey, Justin, you suck. Blood. Get it?
Oh.
Because it's a movie with, vampires.
I get it. I'm Dan, and I'm just the chill-ass vampire chilling in the back of the club.
You would be.
We are here today to discuss Night Teeth. So this was directed by Adam Randall, starring Jorge Lendenborg Jr. as Benny, Debbie Ryan as Blair, Lucy Fry as Zoe, Raul Castillo as Jay, and Alfie Allen as Victor. So we open with a monologue about vampires in human society. You see, kind of from ancient times, humans and vampires have been warring with one another. But kind of in modern times, humans have sort of forgotten their existence and vampires have worked their way into the upper echelons of society. You know, they're all rich and whatnot. Well, in the city of L.A. specifically, the neighborhood of Boyle Heights has fought the vampires to a standstill. So the two sides basically agreed to a truce. Tonight, though, things are about to change. Nico, why don't you tell us how?
All right, so we open with Jay, a vampire hunter living in Boyle Heights, and his girlfriend. He doesn't live in his girlfriend, he lives with his girlfriend.
He doesn't live with his girlfriend either. We just open with Jay hanging with his girlfriend.
With him and his girlfriend. While driving around, Jay sees a vampire named Victor in Boyle Heights, which is a clear violation of the truce. He goes to warn his comrades, but finds some of them dead. And to make matters worse, the vampires have taken his girlfriend. We then switch over to Benny. Benny's a college student who lives with his abuela, not in his abuela, in Boyle Heights. And he also happens to be Jay's is it half-brother?
Yeah, they're half-brothers.
I didn't remember them mentioning that. Okay, sure. Thought they were full. Anyway, now that the truce has been broken, Jay wants to chase down Victor and kill him. But this would leave his day job and kind of his night job too, as a chauffeur unattended. After some begging, though, Benny manages to get Jay to let him cover for him, and he heads out to make some cash. So he pulls up to his destination and meets Blair and Zoe, two extremely attractive women who are definitely not vampires. And he introduces himself as Jay, per his brother's instructions, and after a shaky start, he takes the ladies party hopping. After a few parties, however, though, Benny catches on to something. He follows the pair into their next destination and finds them just sucking two dudes off.
Nope.
What I mean.
Nope.
In a hotel.
That doesn't even work.
In a bout of terror, he admits that he's not Jay, much to Zoe's disappointment. He attempts to flee, but the pair catch him and force him to continue driving them.
Well, at this point, Blair reveals to Benny that the pair of them work for Victor, and they are killing the vampire lords that rule Los Angeles. With all of them out of the way, LA is Victor's for the taking. Against his better judgment, Benny begins to develop feelings for Blair, and when she is attacked by the Night Legion, who are a group of professional vampire hunters, he attacks them to protect her.
They kind of suck at their jobs.
They really kind of do. While all this is going on, Jay and his crew are hot on Victor's trail, and Victor invites Jay to a one-on-one dinner sit-down, and Jay, of course, accepts. So Benny, Blair, and Zoe manage to kill all of the vampire lords, but it is revealed that Victor has captured Jay. Despite Blair's protestations, Benny attempts to free his brother, but is caught by Victor. Victor and Zoe want to kill Benny, but Blair, who has fallen for Benny as well, doesn't want to, and she says that she is going to leave the coven. Zoe stabs her, and Benny activates his keikaku, aka plan, crashing his car into Victor's house, letting in the sunlight and killing Zoe. Jay emerges, and Benny fights Victor. Victor bites Benny in the neck, mortally wounding him, while Jay tackles him into sunlight. In order to save his life, Blair feeds Benny some of her blood, turning him into a vampire.
I mean, that's a lot that went down, but I feel like you still need to talk more, Dan. Why don't you tell me how this one ends?
Now, we get to the ending, where Benny comes to terms with his new life as a vampire. He meets with his brother, who indicates that the ruling vampires of LA are gone, and the city will soon erupt into chaos. Benny assures him that he won't forget where he came from, and then leaves. After running with some of his former classmates, Benny leaves to enjoy the night with Blair. The end.
Oh boy. Oh boy. We got a lot to talk about, so let's go ahead and break it down, shall we? First off, visuals. Nico, how does this movie look?
This movie looks really fucking good. Like, literally from the first shot, I was like, God damn, this movie looks good. It starts with a really interesting scene with, like, the lights of Los Angeles dotting on this car's sort of windshield, and it transitions into a really beautiful landscape. And this is a movie that is continuing the trend of just being super fucking colorful and neon, and I love that shit. It looks so pretty.
Agreed. I recently did some research, and I was kind of looking into sometimes how when they're kind of setting up a scene, you know, directors and kind of like visual
You
designers
motherfucker.
oftentimes will go for like two colors, like a primary one and one to either contrast or accent or go along with it. And like that's also pretty apparent in this one as well.
Yeah, totally.
Like when you look at that, you can see it. And I appreciate this movie because one color that they use a lot of is they use a lot of like hues of blues. You know what I mean? There's a lot of that in this movie. Not so much red. And I like that because this movie, while there is certainly blood, there's not like necessarily a ton of bloodlust. These aren't vampires who just rampage and just,
Are you
know,
sure?
I mean, I don't think so. Not particularly. I don't think it's like, you know, it's not like 30 Days of Night or something like that
Well,
where they're out
sure.
here just like rampaging and there's
No,
not.
They only have a room full of humans that are being their blood just
Multiple
drained.
like hotels full of humans.
Right. But that's not bloodlust. That's planning.
That's lust for blood, though.
Is it?
Yeah, which
Is
is the
Hunger
superior
bloodlust?
Vampire D movie.
I mean, no arguments here. Either way, I too like a lot of the neonish colors. I'm big on that. And I really liked the visuals on it. I also liked what I saw.
Also, everyone in this movie was bad as fuck.
Facts.
Like,
Maybe
even
that.
Abuela. Abuela, you can get it.
You've
Hit
lost
us up.
me.
DOTD.
You've
Whore.
lost me. You've lost me. You've lost me. Hey, Dan, after that revelation, I'm going to need you to come in and tell me what you think this looks like.
I mean, I largely agree with both of you. Lots of neons. It looks like a very modern movie.
Yes.
To me,
Yeah.
it sort of has that modern Netflix movie look to it.
Mhm.
And that's not at all a bad thing. I mean, it just looks very high quality, high production value, or at least maybe not high production value, but well executed production, I guess.
Very well
And-
executed, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I enjoyed it. I liked it quite a bit. And I liked the costume design.
Yes, I did as well.
Like I
did.
thought,
Yeah.
I thought Zoe and Blair looked cool. Aside from just being bad, like I thought they were like cool looking, and their outfits were kind of cool.
Now, moving on to the sound design, Nico, can you tell me if I'm wrong or if I'm right about something?
Oh, I'd love to.
I thought this movie had a lot of tracks that were like licensed tracks, you know, like a lot of tracks with a lot of vocals and stuff like that. And I guess for my personal taste, I thought there were maybe a bit too many of those. There was a part of the movie where it was literally just like one after the other, after the other, after the other. And I was like, Jesus, slow down.
I mean, they
Like,
are
I
going
was
to
like-
parties, though.
I know they are, but like I was more of a fan of like there's some more music where there's not so many vocally driven tracks. And like, for example, there was one part that was like super synthy, and I was like, anyone who listens to the podcast knows that like synth is my shit, you know? And I really liked that a lot. And I almost wish that like that kind of soundtrack had a little bit more room to breathe. Because for me personally, I thought there was like a lot of those. It almost kind of felt like saying like, hello, fellow kids, you want to listen to some modern music? And, you know, they had, you know, like international joints scrambled in there as well. So I definitely got that vibe from it. But I want to hear your take on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're just big mad. There's a lot of parties, and so there's club music. Like, it's the window dressing, man. It just fits the scene.
I mean, there was like real talk. They went to like one club and like one party.
No,
How much parties they went to?
they went to like at least two where we can hear music bumping and shit like that, and the hotel where they're like actually draining people. So I would count that as three.
There was no music coming from the hotel.
Wasn't there? Okay.
No.
Well, either way.
But
Like,
yeah,
it's downtown LA, it's gonna sound like downtown LA.
Dan, I want your take though.
Yeah, a lot of club bangers.
Wow, thank you, Dan. That's such a scholarly, well-informed take, and I appreciate your well-measured responses here,
Thanks.
not only on this episode of the podcast, but everyone.
Oh,
and
thanks.
fuck you, Justin.
Hey, listen, I'll have you know, okay? I'll have you know.
I'm kind of in between you two because pause.
Bro.
Because I think there were a little too much club bangers for my personal taste, but it makes sense because of the parties. Even when they're not at parties, when they are driving to and from different parties, it's a party in the car. Like they're drunk, they're high, they're just being wild, whatever. So I think it fits, but I personally would have liked a little bit more variety. I just don't know how it could have been executed well. It probably could have.
Mm-hmm. Contentious from the off, dear listener. A lot of vibes in the podcast already. Brought to you by Nico. Okay, Nico, I'll see you, bro. I'll see you outside after
Not
class.
brought to you by you, Justin. Just Nico, apparently.
Yeah.
So, as I often say, and as we often do, I want to talk about the ending in this movie. So, as Dan described it with his dulcet tones, we've got Benny who's been bitten and he gets turned, right? And that kind of leads into a little bit of a situation where he's a vampire now, kind of willingly or unwillingly, almost. He's a vampire now. So
I think he's pretty willing.
I mean, true. Not like he really has much of a choice, though, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it was like, do this or die. So how do you guys feel about that ending? Just generally speaking.
I like it. I feel like they're setting it up for a sequel, and this is one of the ones where I actually would really love to see a sequel, just because I love smaller scale interactions like this, where it's the forces of fantastical beings, vampires, werewolves, what have you, but just like in a town, and just really getting to see the locale and seeing almost just the vibrancy of the city itself. I feel like there's a lot they could do with this, and I hope that in a sequel, if there is one, I want to see Benny get down and dirty with some blood.
Dan, what's your take on it? Do you echo much the same as Nico's son?
Pretty much. I liked the fact that he was turned probably about halfway through the movie. I figured that he would be turned and that Blair would turn him. I thought it might be a little bit more willingly, though that being said, similar to Nico, I think he was fairly willing, though maybe not how he wanted it to play out. But like there was a scene where they're like sitting just maybe like 10 minutes before he got turned, where the two of them are sitting like on a couch by a pool and they go through this little like romantic kind of scene and start making out or whatever. And that's when I thought he was going to be turned. And I thought he was just going to be like, hey, bite me, whatever.
Same.
So it didn't quite happen the way I thought, but I figured it would happen.
That's what I would have done.
Yeah, same.
Hey guys, we have a section for that. Hold it back.
True. And kind of like what Nico was saying with sequel, I kind of do want a sequel. I want to see Benny and Blair be like a power couple and just like rule the vampire LA scene.
And I really want to see interactions between Betty and Jay afterwards.
Well, I was going to say
that would be a badass story, I think.
Yeah, I want like Blair and Benny to rule the vampire community, and then I want them to form like a new truce with Jay leading like the human side of it or whatever. I think that would be cool.
What if it just had a hard pivot into like the next movie is about just like music production and rap battles and getting my mans to the top of the Spotify charts?
Or what if like Ari Aster just like produces it? It's just like a completely different film.
This movie's now about trauma.
I will say, so first off, I actually thought that he might not have gotten turned. Like, I was like, oh, maybe they're not going to do it. Like, maybe they're not going to turn him. And I thought, if anything, it was going to be maybe Blair that was going to lead the vampire side of things, and that she was going to, because she liked him so much, she was going to set up a new truce with him. And so that's kind of where they would have gone with that. I mean, they didn't, and I'm fine with it. But that's kind of what I thought. I also agree with everyone that I definitely think that, he was down to get turned. Like, I think they tried a little bit to show that Benny didn't really have like everything going for him in his life. And, Blair was kind of representative of an outside force that he had never encountered before. He never met anyone like her. And just generally speaking, like, I thought it was cool. And yeah, turning into a vampire could be a good thing too at times. Now,
Yeah.
the ending piece with his brother, and his brother's like, hey, like, I hope you don't forget where you come from. Like, I definitely like that as well. And I hope that if they do come out with the sequel, I feel like they'd have a couple of issues, because clearly that's what they were building towards, with like Benny actually fighting members of like the Night Legion and kind of choosing the vampires over them even before he was a vampire. And then you got Jay, who joins the Night Legion. I think that's the implication, that Jay was going to join up with the Night Legion because they told him to if he survived.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that part. Yeah.
So, because the Night Legion was like to Jay, you can't do this on your own. And so I was like, all right, fair enough. But
they can't do it either, apparently. They can't aim for shit.
Yo, I will say they sucked because the main characters had plot armor, but I'm pretty sure they murked a bunch of vampires. Like, I'm pretty sure they murked a bunch of vampires, especially in the club.
Just like off screen. That's fair.
Yeah, just like off screen. It's kind of like they're really hard workers when no one's watching. They just have mad stage fright, bro. So that's kind of where they're at with that. But nah, so I also really quickly wanted to talk about, I guess, Dan, you said this was a modern looking movie. I think this is also kind of like a modern portrayal of vampires, just generally speaking here. How did you like, we've talked about vampire lore on the podcast before. How did you like, the kind of modern aesthetic and take on vampires? How did you like that?
I think it was fine. I mean, I think that we still have the like classic vampires in the upper echelon of society.
Yes.
Except this time it's not quite as hoity-toity as it is, more so like Playboy style kind of party people, especially with the main characters. But even like the glimpses that we get of the vampire lords also seem to be
debaucherous.
Yeah, exactly. I will say silver seemed to be rather ineffective. They or blessed weapons or something, I don't know. But there's a couple daggers in the movie, and Jay has these few daggers, and he uses one on a vampire relatively early on, and it destroys the vampire like instantly at this club. And then Benny finds the daggers, takes one, and then like in the whole final fight scene, I mean, like 3 or 4 times people get stabbed with this knife, and like ain't shit happen. It's like not even like super effective. It's just like not very effective at all.
Yeah.
Like Blair gets stabbed, and then like a minute later she's running around. Victor gets stabbed like 2 or 3 times, and whatever. So I don't know how I feel about that.
Well, I do actually want to touch back on that real quick. I did want to ask you one other question right fast, though, which is, so here we kind of almost had the classic, in order to become a vampire, there's multiple ways we've seen in film how you become a vampire. In some movies, it's they drain you, and so long as they don't kill you, if they keep draining you over multiple times, you become a vampire. Sometimes once is enough. Sometimes you have to be a virgin to turn into a vampire, which that was another wink at it again, because
true.
Benny was, at least according to one character, a virgin. And that's also another kind of like piece of vampiric lore that in some circumstances, if you're a virgin, you become a vampire. If not, you turn into a ghoul. So there's multiple kinds of like interpretations of it, but one thing that at least is somewhat consistent is the kind of, like master level vampire has to give you some of their blood in exchange. So, she gave him her blood, and I personally thought that was just like a really cool nod to like classic vampire lore and everything else like that, because they followed a ton of rules. Like, they honest to goodness followed like a ton of rules. And there was another really cool bit too, where like, again, it's also just like being polite, but when it came to the abuela's house, they didn't go in until he opened the door and let them in.
As you were talking, like as you were leading up to that question, I was realizing that in the I don't know if it also applies to vampire places too, but the one like the last vampire they go to kill, like he invites them into his place. Again, I know he's a vampire, so I don't know if that changes things at all, but they don't go in until he actually opens the door and like invites them in.
Yeah.
As I understand it, it's because remember, he had told her, he was like, hey, I haven't seen you in a long time. Like, you haven't dropped by in years.
Mm-hmm.
And so what it is, at least the interpretation of it that I rock with a lot, is if you are invited, the master of the house can extend you this invitation and it can be withdrawn at any point in time. But like, you have to be invited in. And I think because he was a vampire, he's well aware of it. So it's kind of like them hamming it up a little bit, or him playing it up. Like, he bows and lets them into the house because that's how cool he is with everybody. So I like that.
Also, I guess at the time I just took it for, hey, these are exclusive parties because they're vampires, and that's still probably mostly the reason, but like all the different buildings that they go to are parties and shit. So there's always like a bouncer outside, or they have like these little like sigil type things that they have to like have somebody scan to actually go in the building. So I guess that also kind of qualifies.
Yeah, there was a ton of really cool nods to the lore basically throughout. And also, like, this was another thing, but I don't know if you picked up on it, but the vampires were actually allowed to have thralls as part of the truce. And I thought that was pretty cool as well. Because part of the terms of the truce was they weren't allowed to suck blood from the unwilling, which I was like, oh, that's actually pretty badass. And that's how they kind of like maintain their secrecy, because they basically just have people that they, you know, draw blood from, because that's what the dudes were in the hotel. Like, they were just, oh, like, we get to, at least that was my interpretation of it. I think they were vampires too.
No.
Because I thought that's who they went to kill. No?
They were just regular people, I'm pretty sure.
They were the owners.
The
two dudes
they were like chained up were the owners of the hotel?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
I don't think that's true.
Because that's what the receptionist said, remember?
Well, maybe, yeah. Okay, yeah, sure.
And I think that was kind of like a little bit of like pleasure play or whatever, because like,
yeah, it was.
Because they were like, oh, like you, and also they said multiple times in the movie, you give good blood. And I was like, what's really going on here? What's really going on? But, you know, kind of speaking of that, Nico, I want to bring you into this combo a little bit now.
Okay.
So Dan was talking a little bit about, you know, kind of like the vampiric power levels. How'd you feel about them in terms of their strength? I mean, we see a scene where Victor basically gets his head blown off. Like, he gets a giant hole put in his head. And that's really nothing more than an inconvenience to him, no?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like they've pretty much just got God mode on, except for those few exceptions, like sunlight and I guess being stabbed in the heart with something that may or may not be silver, which is fine. I was more so curious and maybe a little bit disappointed. Anytime there's a vampire movie, I really, really hope that the movie has a lot of interesting shots with mirrors, and there weren't any moments where they took advantage of that. And I was kind of disappointed just because like they showed up in mirrors, which was, you know, fine, but like I thought they would do a little bit more with that.
There's only one that I can think of. Dan, were you about to say that?
Near the beginning when Benny meets Blair. I didn't think about that. She shows up in the rearview mirror.
Yep. Which, can I just say, that led me down a path of like, yo, wait a second. If she shows up in the mirror, is she either option A, a thrall?
See, that's what I was thinking.
Or B, and this is my working theory, that the two of them were actually not vampires at all, but it like would make us think they were. But the two of them were actually vampire hunters, and they were killing all the vampires.
That would have been sick.
I thought that's what they might be doing as well. And like they were actually, because remember, his brother sent him to go pick them up and drive them around.
Right.
And like, I thought he didn't want him to go because they were going to do something dangerous, but then he was like, fine, you know, like they can take care of him. So that's what I thought was going to go down. But, you know, either way. Good discussion all around. I like that. I like that talking about lore. But you see, we have to agree to disagree. You can't be cold until you get hot first to get cold. And now
that's not
I want
how that works.
You can't wake up unless you were asleep.
Yeah. Wake me up. Wake me up
inside.
Okay, now y'all got that out of the way. Nico, we oftentimes on the pod discuss how horror something is. And by that, I mean to say, how horror adjacent is this movie? You know, like what are we really talking about here when we talk about this movie in terms of horror? How many elements of horror are there? Truly.
So this is a movie that we're reviewing because it's a dope movie with vampires, but it's not a horror movie, bro. This is like a crime thriller thing. Like there's no jump scares. There's no any kind of like tension building to make you scared as the audience. It's like I'm glad we reviewed it. The movie's dope, but it's not horror.
See, I once heard somebody say that we as the audience don't necessarily have to be scared, because if the characters themselves are experiencing horror, that in and of itself can make the movie have an element of horror. Or so I've heard from a source.
Yeah, I know you're talking about me, motherfucker, but like these are very clearly beats from a crime drama. They're not beats from a horror movie. You don't go in a horror movie like clubbing around LA.
You don't?
Can you think of one?
Yeah, Neon Demon.
I can't speak to that, but I still maintain my point.
Hey, you got your piece, bro. Speak your piece. You feel me? You got to speak your piece on that.
I did.
So I'm going to say my piece too. So IMO, first off, don't get me wrong. I don't think you're walking into this like you're walking into a fucking Alien or something like that.
No.
Like, I think far from it. I think Benny is a guy full of charisma. There's a lot of kind of funny stuff. I do think that I would consider this to be, honestly, I feel like this is kind of one of those movies. It's not even on the same level quite as like a Underworld joint. I actually think there's probably a little heavier of like a romance element to this.
They lean into it more so, yeah.
And I think that it's got the action scenes as well, obviously. And we've kind of talked before about the juxtaposition of action and horror.
Definitely has a better romance than Underworld, too.
I agree with you there.
God.
But I also think that there are parts in this movie where I know that Benny's meant to be scared. And there's like parts where I do think it's like a little bit tense. Would I say this is like really very scary? Was I ever scared? No, not really. But I do think it falls kind of within that square of like horror adjacents, where sometimes we tend to put films like, like Dale and Tucker or something that it's got the spirit, it's got the heart. Maybe it doesn't have the, the full on oomph of it, but I think it's got the heart. Dan, any words you want to add into this gentlemanly discussion of pristine individuals? See, I was nice to you today. I ain't even throw no shade at you, bro.
You're right. You're about to
Little
though,
bitch.
because I'm on Nico's side.
But no, so go ahead.
I'm on Nico's side. I don't think it's a horror movie.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Not really, but go on.
I would call it horror adjacent, sure. But to me, like a horror movie has to instill some amount of dread in you or scared, again, tension, things like that. And this doesn't do any of that. I think it's a great movie and sure the characters feel like that, but I personally don't think that wouldn't be my definition of a horror movie. But I don't quite know what to classify it as, because to me this is just like a culmination of a lot of things. It's like a little bit of romance, like I guess like you watch the Avengers and it's like, okay, like what kind of movie is this?
A horror movie?
Well, no, but I mean,
Ultron represents a very real scare in it's technology and society.
I mean, half the world did die. Hey. But I mean that in the sense of it's like just a bunch of different genres and things kind of thrown together to kind of create a mishmash of stuff. So that's kind of how I think of it. We've got a little bit of action. We've got a little bit of romance, maybe a little bit of drama in there, a little bit of horror. We've got a little bit of a lot of stuff in there. Smorgasbord of genres, if you will.
Smorgasbord?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the category. Maybe that's what it should be now, bro.
Smorgasbord? Yeah.
Is it prestige smorgasbord? But no. So, So now we're going to turn into the what would you do section here real quick. And
literally everyone.
We're going to keep this one mad specifico here, okay? So first off, let's say, so you're in Benny's position and you're covering for your bro. You pull up to the house and so you meet the two of them and you start taking them out to the parties, and the night pretty much proceeds as normal until you get to the part where you find yourself in the hotel and you see them sucking blood. What would you do in that scenario?
Honestly, I'd probably leave. Like as much as like Nico's been joking, and to which I agree. Like, sort of the joke of being like, yeah, I would totally be a vampire with them. Hell yeah, that'd be badass. But I think in real life, I would just be like, nah, bro, nah, I don't get paid enough for this shit, and I was just like,
That's fair. Now, Nico, you might have a different answer.
I mean, I think I would have like actually dead ass been like, yo, can I like, you want to make me part of your clan? What's good? I got this weird thing where I can't eat bread, and maybe y'all could like fix that vis-a-vis the whole like vampire thing. I mean, I already got a restrictive diet. What's one more thing?
Super side note. I keep meaning to reference this book on the pod, and I will find this book eventually. This dude went into like a real interesting breakdown of how vampirism either helped or hindered like certain conditions. It was a real weird book. It like went really deep and detailed. Like they talked about all types of blood-related diseases and stuff. It was pretty ill. Anyways, Nico, I'll have to reference that to see if it'll actually help you out or not.
I mean,
TBD, TBD. But Nico is pretty much going to sit down and just like expose his neck and say, "Take me now, my queen." But I really want to know.
Always gonna simp for some bad vampires, bro. Always gonna simp.
Facts.
All right, you know what? I was gonna say no, but I really am gonna say yes. See, here's what I would really do, right? In that particular moment, I'd be like, you know what? I'm gonna have to stick with you because I'm really trying to get this bread. Grind set always 24/7. But
let's build fam.
But when we get to the next scene, which is my next question, which is, so, like, let's say you realize they got your brother and they're like, go. If you go now, you'll leave in peace. If you enter this house, you'll die. Dan, let's say maybe you didn't leave or like the cops stopped you and so like you stayed with them. At that point in time, are you leaving or are you trying to save your brother?
I'm staying. I'm sticking with it, trying to save the bro.
Okay. Nico, same boat?
Oh, no, I would have been left.
Fair enough.
All right.
Once again, I abandoned Justin.
You know what? I wasn't even going to say it, bro, but I was going to say it.
I have a track record to keep up with this shit, man.
I was going to say it. And I guess very, very last moment here. And let's say that you were Benny and you had a choice, right? Whether or not to become a vampire, would you have? In either his or your boots right now. Or not right now, but like either in his or your boots, would you have become a vampire at that point, given the circumstances of the movie?
See, I don't know. Just because, like, what's the rest of the world like? Why is it only this one little borough in LA that's, like, so fucking hot with vampires and shit? Like, is this something where I could go and be, like, I don't know, head somewhere abroad and find a community, or do I, like, gotta stay there?
I'm assuming it's there all over the world. They were talking about it, and this was kind of like a little microcosm of events happening in one night.
True. I mean, I already said my bit. I'm, damned for eternity.
Right. So Nico is Team Vampire. All right. Dan, how about you?
I think at that point in the movie, I'd be Team Vampire too. At that point, I would have spent long enough with Blair that I would have been like, yeah, I'm with you on this. Let's do it.
All right, fair enough. So we all agree with Benny here. We all agree with Benny. So let's
Which is
turn
funny because
quick.
as I was watching this with my roommate, he kept yelling at the screen, "Why are you trusting them? What are you doing?" I'm just like, hey, bro, I get it.
Hey, look, you know what? You both make very good points, but I think you make a stronger one. So
Yep.
Now I want to take a quick look at Rotten Tomatoes here, and oh boy, oh buddy, how'd you guys think it did?
Given your buddy, I'm gonna guess low.
How low? Give me a number. Give me a number.
Like 42.
Dan, how about you?
Say 63.
Nico continues his prophetic streak as the movie sits at a 38% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes. Audience was only slightly more generous at a 47%. Shit. Hard times have fallen on Night Teeth.
Wow.
But maybe we can shed some light on this one. So if y'all don't mind, give me just your real quick general thoughts on the movie and then your number, really. So who wants to lead the charge here?
I'll lead the charge and be the happiest lad in the pod. I really fucked with this movie. It's a lot of fun. It's a visual delight. It's not horror, but I think you should watch it. And I think the people who are rating it so low are either a bunch of boomers who don't like seeing young people on the screen or just don't know how to have fun. So to you, I say go take your Metamucil and fuck off. I'm giving this an 80.
No
Wow.
disrespect to Metamucil, though. You come in in a pinch, You come in a pinch.
No sponsor.
No sponsor.
Yet.
Dan, following that, what you got to say, bro?
So I enjoy this movie. I went into it thinking I wouldn't. Like, I don't really know why, but I was just like, I don't feel like this isn't going to be a good movie, whatever. But it made me enjoy it. Like, I had a good time. It was a good movie. I thought there were a couple like cringy lines in here and there, but overall, I actually had a great time watching it. I'm going to give it a 87.
Nico, what was the score you gave it again?
80.
So I'm going to say this. I walked into this movie with no expectations. This was a movie that had been sitting on my, watch list on Netflix for quite some time. And when I booted it up, when I started it, after the first 10 minutes, I was like, bro, I've been wanting something like this. And as the movie gets told, it's not the strongest movie in terms of plot. There's one or two plot holes. They really big up the neighborhood as a really badass force. There's a line where they're like,
right,
if he attacks, then the neighborhood will follow. And I'm like, okay, but the neighborhood is just doesn't seem to be that good. And I don't know. I'm talking about in terms of attack potential against vampires. They don't, it seems like it's just, the one group and the rest of them kind of suck because they all got murked. So, I mean, there's that. But that withstanding and that aside, I think all the actors in this movie are super charismatic. They all play their roles excellently. Special shout outs to Benny, who is just, this guy goes through all the emotions in one night, bro. He's excited to make bread. He's awkward and anxious, scared, horny, brave. Every emotion a guy can have, he's had in that one night. And to kind of because I agree with pretty much everything Nico said about this movie, aside from the one line about it not being horror. Literally everything Nico says about this movie, I literally agree with him for the entire podcast. So why the tension, bro? But no, so
because here's fucking why you texted me
Wow.
in the first 10 minutes saying man, I really fucked with this movie, and I wanted to hate it. I wanted to hate this movie, but God damn it, it's just so fun,
bro. Hate can't overpower fun, bro. But no,
it can't.
So literally, what Nico said about he enjoys seeing these kind of fantastical things take place in a small setting, bro. I said it when we fucking reviewed Underworld. I was like, I want to see more of just regular shit with vampires.
Yeah.
Not every movie has to be and then the ancient one Marcus descended from heaven to spread his vampire seed on the yoke of the world. Not necessary. It could just be vampires out clubbing, and don't go back and listen to what I just said.
Yes.
So
That's not really the plot of Underworld, but that's all right.
So regardless, I fucking dug this movie. I really, really enjoyed it. I honestly love this movie. I honestly do. It has flaws. It's not perfect, but I really enjoyed it much more than I thought I would. 88.
Okay.
So now, my comrades in arms, is this something that's going to get a recommendation? Do we recommend this to our viewing audience?
Absolutely.
All right.
Wholeheartedly.
All right. Golden Seal?
Nah. Sorry, homie.
That's fair. That's fair. I think that would have been a stretch for me personally, but this is a fucking high recommend for me personally.
Yeah, same. Agreed. And I want to be clear too. We all watch this movie independently. We watch most 99% of our movies independently. So it's interesting that we all have the same thoughts on this movie pretty much, except it's not like we were sitting around and we all came to a conclusion because we're having a good time together.
Nah.
We all thought all of these thoughts individually.
And that's so wild as well. Because this is, I think, one of the few movies where we've literally been so in line about
this and
everything.
The Omen.
I literally think the only thing that we disagreed on the whole podcast was whether or not it's horror. That was it. And that's normally step one. We normally go on from there until 5 different levels.
And honestly, that's just semantics. It's not even really about
I know, it really was just semantics.
Yeah.
Man, spice level kind of went down. This is a very mild, enjoyable souffle of a podcast we've made here. any last words before we wrap this one up?
Ayo, Megan, get at me.
Yo, can I just say, okay, so there's a quick part where
Yeah, I know exactly.
Megan
what you're
Fox
gonna say,
has
bro.
like a 2-minute cameo in this movie along with Sydney Sweeney. And I'm just like, bruh, how much did they pay you for this?
Mhm.
Because the two of them are there for like maybe, 4 minutes tops, if that.
Yeah. And like they have this air of regal intimidation and shit, but like then they're gone.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they're gone. They're like, all right. So that was pretty funny. But yeah, so if you like what you've heard, definitely drop us a line. Or if you don't like what you've heard, still drop us a line. We're on Twitter and Instagram at DOTD Horror. We're also on Facebook. Don't open that door. But yeah, you can also check out every other episode we've ever done on our website. That's DOTDhorror.com. But till then, you know what I mean? Just watch your backs. Vampires are out there, so you know what you got to do. And as always, dear listener, don't open that door. Bye.